This movie should have been rated NC-17. Legitimately, I don't know how they got away with showing almost half the stuff that they did. What's up, you guys? It's Jonathan Carter, and today we are going to be talking about the first Omen.
You don't have to be afraid. This child is his way.
The first Omen is the newest installment in the Omen series that started with the 1970s original, directed by the amazing Richard Donner. This movie being called The First Omen, it is obviously a prequel to the original Omen. So is this movie a necessary legacy sequel or prequel, would you? We are gonna get into all of that with the positives. In a day and age where we're getting a lot of these legacy sequels, Exorcist Believer, all the new Scream movies, new Halloween, movies like that, it's hard to justify the existence of your own film as just a legacy horror film when so many horror movies are doing it, some to better results than others. That being said, I think this movie not only works as an addition to the Omen series, but also just stands on its own two legs more than I thought it would. It fits so well with the original Omen, but also just kind of on its own as a intro to these movies. Like, you could watch it as a prequel to the Omen, or you could watch it, you know, how it came out. So this movie plays that duality very well of being a great prequel, but also being a very solid, just standalone project. The biggest thing I want to talk about here, the scares and just the atmosphere that this movie creates. Movies like the original Omen, the original Exorcist, The Shining, people say that those movies push the envelope of what horror could and couldn't do, what you could show on the screen. And obviously, you know, those movies came out in the 70s. So horror and just movies in general was very different back then. They weren't expecting a lot of what modern audiences expect today. So the shock value that you have to put in your movie increases as time goes on. So not only did the original Omen truly push the envelope with a lot of its imagery and themes of, you know, raising the Antichrist, that your child is the Antichrist. Because the first Omen, because the original Omen did that, the first Omen has to do that as well, but it has to do that 50 years later. That's a much harder task. This movie, flat out, does that. I have never seen imagery in a film like this. There are articles like on the internet, the director talking about how this movie, like, he had to kind of fight with the studio to not get the NC-17 rating because that can kind of hinder your movie. So they obviously, you know, got the R rating, but I don't know how. Things that you see in this film having to do with pregnancy or any kind of like religious violence or just violence, never before done in a movie, and I mean that. Moving along in this section, all of the actors are doing an amazing job here. I don't know the main actress, I've never seen her in anything, but she led this movie so incredibly well, and she fully stepped up to the plate and delivered in every single place that she could. This film, being a prequel to the original Omen, obviously sets it in the 70s, the kind of era that they create on a wardrobe level, on a stylistic level. Like, you fully believe that this takes place in the 70s. The film follows, just like from the very first shot of this movie, the film work follows the film work of the original Omen, beat for beat, like the same kind of camera twists and angles. It feels like you are watching a sequel to the Omen that came out 2 years later in the 70s. You can tell that they really did their homework. Closing out the positives, the sense of dread and the scares in this movie. This movie it's like on a whole nother level from anything else that has come out recently. I was downright like terrified to my core. Every level, musical score, acting, setting, the drama, all of it delivers. That'll bring us into the mixed category. A lot of things I want to say in the mixed category kind of fall more into the negative category, so I'm gonna kind of try to weave through this a little bit. The movie does play very well as a prequel to the original. That idea of the film kind of holds it back just from its existence because it plays as a prequel to a beloved original horror film. It can't be its own thing from the start. It's almost like a double-edged sword because it plays so well into the original Omen, but because it has to play into the original Omen, it can't be its own thing. You could kind of feel the movie shifting the narrative a little bit towards the end to fit into the rest of the Omen series. It's tricky. It can't truly be its own thing. The movie did find a good way at the end of leaving it very much open, like the narrative can continue. So it does leave a very nice door open, but I mean, obviously the movie being a prequel, you kind of already know where it's going from the start. That'll bring us into the negatives. The biggest thing I want to talk about here is what I talked about at the beginning of the video in the positives, ironically, how to set yourself apart nowadays with horror and push the envelope, you have to do things that have never been done before. You have to find an inventive way to do that. And this movie definitely does that, like full force. You cannot deny that. There's one scene in particular just came off more gross than anything. When the original Omen came out, you could leave a lot more to the imagination then because it was the 70s and people in the 70s haven't seen the things that we have today, right? With the original Omen, you find out in the movie, if you haven't seen the original Omen, spoilers here, when they go to the grave of the real mother of Damien, they find the carcass of a jackal. It's implied, key word there, implied that somebody mated with a jackal and then they created the Antichrist. At least that's what the original Omen alludes to. Does it show that? No. Does it need to? No. So that brings us into the negative aspect here of the first Omen. There is a scene, I don't want to get too spoilery, having to do with a jackal that I just didn't think was necessary. There's that tricky tightrope that you have to walk of wanting to push the envelope of horror and show imagery that you've never shown or do things that have never been done, but then also like you toe the line of veering too far where you're like, okay, like, yeah, we are pushing the envelope and we're moving into new things, new territory here, but at what cost? So that's the most negative aspect of this film, is that the movie does push the envelope very well, and it really pushes the envelope, but with one scene in particular, it's to a fault. Just the one scene. Finishing off this review, we're gonna do a quick spoiler section here. I'm gonna put a timestamp somewhere if you don't want to be spoiled or you haven't seen the movie, like skip to this timestamp. The scene that I'm talking about, surprisingly, is not the one where a demon hand is coming out of a woman. Surprisingly, the negative scene I'm talking about is the mating scene with the jackal. It was just a little too much for me and not something that I really ever wanted to see. I know that's odd because it's not the most grotesque thing in the film. It's just like the idea of it, just of a jackal and a human and creating the Antichrist. Like, you didn't really have to show it. Like, we get the idea. We know what it, like, people know what that means. But yeah, the biggest thing here in the spoiler section, you guys know what I'm talking about. That hand, that demon hand, came out of that woman. There was that was insane. I was with my fiance and I saw this together in the theaters, and we I didn't know what to do. It was like 2 scenes later, like 10 minutes later, where I was like kind of getting like recouped back into the movie, still in disbelief that we saw this like hand out, like, I don't know. That scene in particular, I have no idea how that did not get, like, how that cleared an R rating and did not get the NC-17. I don't think that article of the NC-17, like, talking about the director, like, potentially getting that rating, I don't think that was clickbait. Like, I legitimately think that there was some convincing with the studio and all of that to get an R rating, because crazy. Like, after that scene, I was sitting there and I was just like...
they ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would.
What do you really do after seeing that? How do you, there's so many feelings about that. I think the movie did tie itself up very well. Like, I like how it leaves the door open because there were twins at the end. I cannot think of the main character's name. The mother of Damien, she had twins, and the twin of Damien is a girl, and so at the end they're in that log cabin, or they're in that cabin with her and Carlita, and they have the baby. So obviously it opens, like, they go into the whole Damien initiative thing or whatever. It flows into the original Omen very well. But so I do like how, you know, she didn't just die like you presume in the original Omen. She is still alive, but not only is she still alive, but there's a twin of Damien. So I think if this movie does well, which it seems to be doing well, it's getting positive reviews. I don't know financially like how it's gonna do as an R-rated horror. I think if it does well, that would be a very interesting story of moving forward with that and still having her kind of being hunted down by these like psycho nuns, right? Or priests, and just, that would be very interesting, and I would love to see that. And I think the movie did end, like, I enjoyed where the movie went. Wrapping all this one up, couple like last little things I want to talk about. People have asked me on my TikTok reviews or Instagram reviews, do they need to see the original Omen to see this one? I would say no. The ending and like where the movie goes would make more sense if you've seen the original, but you can see this one without having seen any of the other Omen movies. Also, because you have to say it now because of what Marvel has done to our brains with movies, there's no post-credit scene, there's nothing like that. When the credits start rolling, the movie's done, you can leave. But also at the end in the credits, they play the original score. They play the score from the original Omen that won an Oscar, and it is just fantastic and eerie and just so creepy. And I wish it had played more in the film itself, but if you want to kind of hear that, stick around in the credits for a little bit. All that being said, I'm gonna give the first Omen a 7.5 out of 10, and I did thoroughly enjoy this one. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to, like and subscribe. That would really help me out a lot. And also follow me on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. I post shorter reviews there, under 1 minute quick reviews, kind of just like on the go for people to watch. I just film them really quickly and get them out before I do like the bigger video here. So if you'd be interested in that, definitely check me out, Instagram, TikTok. Like I said, please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know all your thoughts on the first Omen in the comments. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it too much for you? Was it not enough for you? That's a possibility, maybe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.